let's go over the 7 Hermetic Laws that can be found in the Kybalion before we move on with our book club to chapter 3 and 4. And I encourage you to pick one of these 7 to just focus on for the week to come. It can be really helpful. So I have time for one take. Here we go. Number 1, the principle of mentalism. The all is mind, the universe is mental. And if I put my hand up, that means capitalized letters. I've been reading a lot of Blake lately, and it's great how he just capitalizes all over the place. And the 3 Initiates, William Walker Atkinson, does the same, and I think it really brings some flavor to the text. As he says here, the Hermetic student is enabled to apply intelligently the great mental laws, instead of using them in a haphazard manner. With the master key in his possession, the student may unlock the many doors of the mental and psychic temple of knowledge. This principle explains the true nature of energy, power, and matter, and why and how all of these subordinate to the mastery of mind. And this speaks to something that's a current scientific debate you can see in Beyond Physicalism, for instance, about the basis of the universe being mental and then matter coming out of that. And there's some good arguments to be made. No one really knows, but that's a great book for that idea that the universe is actually mental. Number 2, the principle of correspondence. As above, so below as above. Classic. This principle is of universal application and manifestation on the various planes of the material, mental, and spiritual universe. The ancient Hermeticists considered this principle as one of the most important mental instruments by which man has been able to pry aside the obstacles which hid from view the unknown. Its use even tore aside the veil of Isis to the extent that a glimpse of the face of the goddess might be caught. Just as a knowledge of the principles of geometry enables man to measure distant suns and their movements while seated in his observatory, so a knowledge of the principle of correspondence enables man to reason intelligently from the known to the unknown. Studying the monad, he understands the archangel. The monad's an idea from Leibniz. It's one of the a basic piece of matter. And as a scientist, the as above, so below is perhaps the most helpful one to me as well. You see the same thing at the chemical level that you see at the galactic level. It's a lot of fun. That's what my books are based on. Number 3, the principle of vibration. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. From corpuscle and electron, atom and molecule, to worlds and universes, everything is in vibratory motion. This is also true on the planes of energy and force, which are but varying degrees of vibration, and also on the mental planes, whose states depend upon vibrations, and even on the spiritual planes. The masters also apply this principle to the conquering of natural phenomena in various ways. Quote, "He who understands the principle of vibration has grasped the scepter of power," says one of the old writers. Number 4, the principle of polarity. The Kybalion says, everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes must be reconciled. To illustrate, heat and cold, although opposites, are really the same thing. The differences consisting merely of degrees of the same thing. Look at your thermometer and see if you can discover where heat terminates and cold begins! Exclamation mark. There's no such thing as absolute heat and absolute cold. The two terms heat and cold simply indicate varying degrees of the same thing, and that same thing which manifests as heat and cold is merely a form, variety, and rate of vibration. So heat and cold are simply the two poles of that which we call heat, and the phenomena attendant thereupon are manifestations of the principle of polarity. When does darkness leave off and light begin? What is the difference between large and small, between hard and soft, between black and white, between sharp and dull, between noise and quiet, between high and low, between positive and negative? The principal polarity explains these paradoxes, and no other principle can supersede it. The same principle operates on the mental plane. Let us take a radical and extreme example, that of love and hate, two mental states apparently totally different, and yet there are degrees of hate and degrees of love, and a middle point in which we use the terms like or dislike, which shade into each other so gradually that sometimes we are at a loss to know whether we like or dislike or neither. And all are simply degrees of the same thing. And more than this, and considered of more importance by the Hermeticists, it is possible to change the vibrations of hate to the vibrations of love in one's own mind and in the minds of others. Many of you who read these lines have had personal experience of the involuntary, rapid transition from love to hate, and the reverse in your own case and that of others. And you will therefore realize the possibility of this being accomplished by the use of the will by means of the Hermetic formula. Good and evil are but poles of the same thing, and the Hermeticist understands the art of transmuting evil into good by means of an application of the principle of polarity. In short, the art of polarization becomes a phase of mental alchemy, known and practiced by ancient and modern Hermetic masters, as understanding of this principle will enable one to change their own polarity as well as that of others, if they will devote the time and study necessary to master the art. Number 5, the principle of rhythm. The Kybalion says, everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. A tide-like ebb and flow, a high tide and a low tide, between the two poles which exist in accordance with the principal polarity described a moment ago. There is always an action and a reaction, an advance and a retreat, a rising and a sinking. This is in the affairs of the universe, suns, worlds, men, animals, mind, energy, and matter. This law is manifest in the creation and destruction of worlds, in the rise and fall of nations, in the life of all things, and finally in the mental states of man. And it is with this latter that Hermeticists find the understanding of the principle most important. Number 6, the principle of cause and effect. The Kybalion says, every cause has its effect, every effect has its cause, everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. This principle embodies the fact that there is cause for every effect and effect from every cause. It explains that everything happens according to law, that nothing ever merely happens, that there is no such thing as chance, that while there are various planes of cause and effect, the higher dominating the lower planes, still nothing ever entirely escapes the law. The Hermeticists understand the art and methods of rising above the ordinary plane of cause and effect to a certain degree, and by mentally rising to a higher plane, they become causers instead of effects. The masses of people are carried along, obedient to environment, the will and desires of others, than themselves, heredity, suggestion, and other outward causes, moving them about like pawns on the chessboard of life. But the masters, rising to the plane above, dominate their moods, characters, qualities, and powers, as well as the environment surrounding them, and become movers instead of pawns. 7, the principle of gender. Gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine. Principle, gender manifests on all planes. Everything and every person contains the two elements or principles of this great principle. If you understand the philosophy of mental and spiritual creation, generation, and regeneration, you must understand and study this Hermetic principle. So, hopefully you made it to the end with me. If so, comment the number 7. Join us on the Discord.